Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As we approach midlife, there are many things that we tend to explore and try to validate when we come to trying to understand what the truth behind what's in front of us really is. One of those most interesting hobbies that really has us kind of in an uproar at times is that of UFOs. We want to try to believe, is there life on other planets? If so, when and where will they make contact with us? Or have they already, and perhaps it's all been swept under the carpet and kept a deep secret? Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today, we're going to be talking about a massive alien spacecraft that landed at the Nevada test site north of Las Vegas on July 16th, 1965. This was following a plan set in motion by President John F. Kennedy in 1962. The alien visitors welcomed 12 astronaut-trained military personnel aboard their craft for the 10-month journey to their home planet known as Serpo. On the Beyond 50 radio program today, we're going to be talking with UFO researcher and freelance writer who is also a member of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena and the Mutual UFO Network. He has published more than 50 articles in such magazines as Atlantis Rising and New Dawn magazines, and his book is Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, a true story of interplanetary travel. I'd like to welcome to our program today our guest, Len Caston. Len, how are you today?
Good, Dan. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So have you had an opportunity to be inside any of these spacecraft, or is it still kind of out of your reach like it tends to be for a lot of us?
Well, I believe I was taken on board way back when I had my experience in the Air Force, but I never did get hypnotized to find out exactly what happened.
Okay. Now, tell us, this book is actually pretty fascinating, especially within the first couple of chapters when you talk about how Nazi Germany was really involved with this quite a bit, especially in building their base, if you will, down in the Antarctic. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right. They built a base under the ice in Antarctica starting in 1938, which was actually before World War II. Mm-hmm. That's when they started bringing down all kinds of specialists, botanists, all types of scientists to build the base. And evidently, they meant it to last for a long time.
So apparently, they began to know, or something was going on, as you were talking about with the reptilians. Is that true?
Well, evidently, that was the extraterrestrial race they were dealing with. Most likely, the reptilians and the Greys who are allied. Actually, the reptilians are actually more powerful than the Greys, and they rule over that race. But that's the consensus. That would be the group that they were dealing with. They're from the constellation Draco, which I believe is about 80 light years from here. And that's where they were getting all their advanced technology.
You know, one thing I've always been fascinated by was the idea that here we were for hundreds of years, you know, at a particular technological set. And then all of a sudden we just seem to accelerate and advance within the course of less than 100 years, and you kind of leaves you scratching your head that, you know, how did we learn all this so fast?
Exactly. Some of the technology displayed by the Germans in World War II was way beyond anything that had ever happened before. The things they were developing in secret, plus the rocketry, all of that was really a giant leap ahead of anything that had taken place before. So we can, I think, pretty much assume that a lot of that was coming from extraterrestrial assistance.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just kind of curious, Len, what first of all got you involved or interested in UFO phenomenon? And you know, as you start reading Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, there's a lot of fascinating information that leaves you wondering, you know, how were you able to get access to some of it?
Well, I did a lot of research. I had written over 70 articles for Atlantis Rising when I wrote my first book. And my first book incorporated 26 of those articles, and they became the book. Just a lot of research and dealing with a lot of people who had personal experiences. I attended the UFO Congress in Nevada every year for about 15 years, had met people from all over the world, talked to them, and just seemed to be able to get exposed to a lot of this information.
Mm-hmm. I know what's fascinating, too, is you talk about how the 12 astronauts were chosen to go on this journey with aliens known as Ebens, to basically, go and find out, how they live and what they're doing. How did all this begin?
Well, it all began with Roswell. The Roswell craft that crashed in, actually it was about 75 miles northwest of Roswell. 5 aliens were dead, but 1 survived. And the fact that one alien survived, that's what started the whole thing in motion, because he was taken to Los Alamos Laboratories in New Mexico, and we communicated with him. And that was the beginning of the contact with Serpo. At that point, we didn't know the name of his planet. All we knew was that he was from a different star system. And we eventually were able to find out more about where he came from.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting because John F. Kennedy was really big on the space program, and when you consider the time that he put it into motion to the time that it actually happened, that even seemed to be a short period of time as well. Was there any help with this alien race in achieving something like this?
Well, by the time Kennedy came on the scene, we had already been dealing with the Ebens for approximately 10 years. Because Roswell was in 1947. The first communications between the live alien and his planet was in 1952. Mm-hmm. It took about 5 years where we were able to figure out how to communicate with the device, the communications device that was found on the craft. Those conversations that he had in 1952 began the contact that ended and culminated in the journey in 1965.
Now, how long was the period of time that these 12 left planet Earth to be at Serpo, and how did they go about getting there? I know that there was the talk of wormholes and how they knew how to use those and the like. Tell us about that.
Well, the arrangement was, which was made in really over the course of the 10-year period before Kennedy came to office, was that our people would be taken on board their craft and taken to their planet for a period of 10 years. That was the arrangement. And in return, they would leave one of their people here, which they did. And the craft would arrive here in April of 1964. Mm-hmm. So when Kennedy gave the okay for this program, it had already been pretty meticulously planned. And all he did was say okay, and it went forward. So they did arrive here in April of 1964. That was the first landing. But at that time, they declined to take the 12 astronauts with them. Said they would come back for them the following year in 1965, which they did. And so they were taken back to their. They were actually being trained at a CIA training base in Virginia. They were taken back there to wait out the year, and then in July of '65, they were brought back to the Nevada test site for the second landing, and that was sort of the scene that was shown in Close Encounters, mm-hmm. although this was taking place at the Nevada test site and not on top of the Devil's Tower. Mm-hmm. And they stayed there for 13 years. They took a 10-month journey to Serpo on the alien craft, and they remained on Serpo for 13 years. They were supposed to be there only for 10 years, but they lost track of time. All their timekeeping apparatus stopped working, and they didn't realize they were there for 13 years. They came back in 1978.
It's interesting that you bring up the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. My wife really enjoyed reading this book, and she just had to see this movie. And it was interesting how she says what you've written and what you see in the movie, you kind of wonder, okay, where did Steven Spielberg get the information, and the idea to make a movie such as that?
Well, that's the question. I have a whole chapter in the book on that. It turned out that just about everything in the movie was very accurate, with the exception of the landing place. It took place at the Nevada test site, not at the Devil's Tower. But other than that, there were scenes in the movie where the 12 people, which in the movie there are 10 men and 2 women, and originally that was the plan, that there would be 10 men and 2 women. So Spielberg had all of that information, and he had it correctly. And he showed the big supply truck carrying all the supplies that they were going to be taking with them. They took with them roughly 90,000 pounds of supplies and equipment on board the alien craft. And that was in the movie. Many of the aspects of the landing were very accurate in the movie. So the question is, where did Spielberg get the information from? We don't know that. He never acknowledged it, but clearly he got some inside information, and that's how he made the movie.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your opinion, why do you think the government has been so secretive about all this all these years? And, and everything seems to always be on the fringe where it sometimes gets arguable as whether any of it really happened. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, this is such a massive subject now.
Right.
And the implications are so vast in terms of technology, in terms of our position in the world, in terms of secrecy, in terms of what could happen if other countries knew about the kind of technology that we have obtained from the aliens. We can't just go around letting all this out, and there are many good reasons for keeping it under wraps. They are trying to release it a little bit at a time. And so movies such as Close Encounters, a lot of movies that we consider science fiction, are all part of what they call a public acclimation program to gradually introduce the subject to the public as best they can without giving out too much scientific and technological information. Mm-hmm. So it's very complicated. And given the situation in the world today with Al-Qaeda and a lot of the enemies that we have all over the world, we cannot just announce that we have this technology.
Right.
But it slowly is leaking out a little bit at a time under a controlled release program.
Mm-hmm. I know when you talk about the technological side, you've begun to piece together why Hitler was in a position to feel pretty much invincible because he felt or knew that he was ahead of the game as a result of this, but pretty much overestimated where his position was, especially when it came to World War II.
Yeah, fortunately, we're very fortunate that Hitler wasn't that smart. Because if he had been, we'd have been in deep trouble. He had working prototypes of these anti-gravity craft. Not only were they working, but they were actually involved in some military operations over England. That's where his jet planes came from, that technology. But in any case, he made many mistakes, which were fortunate for us. Having to fight a war on 2 fronts put him in a position where we could close in rapidly. And of course, our bombing of his facilities and his major manufacturing facilities, that's what did the trick. It was a question of air power more than anything. But if the war had lasted very much longer, we would have been in a very bad position.
Mm-hmm. It's when you think about the idea of traveling to another planet, you realize that, well, aliens are kind of reaching across and saying, hey, we kind of want to connect with you. But we tend to be very paranoid when you see how we reflect aliens in movies. It tends to be an invasion and they're here to take over our planet Earth. But it really isn't quite like that, is it?
Well, In terms of our relationship with this particular civilization, certainly not.
Mm-hmm.
They have become our very good friends, and they have been back here 10 times since that original pickup in 1965. The last one was in 2010, according to the information we have.
Mm-hmm.
So having a diplomatic relationship with a civilization on another planet that's 39 light years from here, who is a civilization that is very much more advanced than we are technologically, and a civilization that has traveled all over the galaxy, that has to be a very, very rewarding relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that we know a lot more about the life in the galaxy now, thanks to that connection, than we could ever have found out on our own.
Give us an idea of some of the things that we have learned that moved us forward from this alien race.
When you say moved us forward, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, technologically speaking, some of the things that we have now, they were most responsible for moving us forward in those areas.
Well, anti-gravity, for one thing, for sure. We started reverse engineering one of the alien crafts from that star system in 1953. They brought it here and gave it to us as a gift. That's what started our relationship, really, following Roswell. Also, some weaponry that we never had before, such as, well, let's see, that we developed certain capabilities over and above, beyond atomic weaponry that we never had before. But that's, of course, top secret as well. There's so much in the area of biotechnology. Now, our people learned about their biotechnology program while we were on their planet, and you can be certain that a lot of that information came back here. So whether we've learned to clone or not, I don't know, but we've learned a lot about genetic engineering that we didn't know before, because they were way, way ahead of us when it came to that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have some really fascinating photographs in the book, and one of them seems to be the planet Serpo itself with two suns. Now, tell us about the planet itself.
Well, the planet was very much like ours. It was slightly smaller. It's slightly smaller in size. It really was not their native planet. They came to that planet as a result of the fact that they had to abandon their original home planet due to volcanic activity. And so, but they had the technology to do that. They looked around, and this was the planet they chose. They had been there about 5,000 years when Roswell took place. So the climate was very similar to ours. They had all the essentials for breathing the correct combination of chemicals in the air: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. All of that was perfect. Temperatures, however, were very much on the high side. Our people had to live underground for a long time because it was just too hot. But eventually they were moved to a northern quadrant where the climate was sort of like Montana on our planet. And that's where they lived out their the 13 years. The animals encountered were kind of strange, but nothing terribly scary. The food was different. Their customs, of course, were very different. But they were very caring and compassionate people, and we got along very well with them. And they treated our people very nicely. They were very true hosts in terms of accepting our people there.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the fascinating things is to take a look at basically their checklist of things they brought with them on this trip. And to note, for instance, their musical list here, I think George Clooney would have been proud to know that his own aunt happened to make that particular list there. But more interestingly enough, you have African chants, okay, and saying the last three of these, Indian chanting music, Tibetan chants, and African chants, were there for the intended benefit of the Eben hosts. So apparently they were into chanting.
Yeah, we had learned that much from them in the interval between 1952 and 1965. We knew a lot about them, and so we took those recordings. The astronauts took those recordings with them as a sort of a gesture of friendliness.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the kind of music they preferred. They took it along with them.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was interested, too, when you think about this, okay, so here's this alien race. They come to Earth. They offer the opportunity for us, and I'm presuming they offer the opportunity for us to travel with them back to their planet. And yet, you know, some of the things that they bring in, for instance, are handguns and military rifles, M66 weapons, grenade launchers. And you kind of think, you know, if they're going to be that friendly to take you there, was there really a need to bring weaponry, do you think?
Well, the man who released the information, called himself Anonymous, did comment on that. He said it was kind of ridiculous, but they were all military people. They felt comfortable having these weapons with them. We didn't, of course, know what exactly we would encounter there. We didn't know how friendly they would be. We didn't know what the dangers were. We didn't know what we would encounter, whether it would be dangerous or not. That's why really they chose military people, because they wanted people who could, if they had to, defend themselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to note we really didn't know how they would react to listening to Elvis Presley music either.
That's right. That's right. That's a long way from Tibetan chants.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm kind of curious, when you were putting this together, what were some things that you found really fascinating, like, wow, I didn't believe it was to this level before, or whatever it may be that really compelled you as you continue to write this book?
Well, I mean, think about what this represents. Here we are traveling, we're sending 12 Americans 39 light years away. This was in 1965. This was a window into the galaxy of tremendous value for our little planet. Mm-hmm. And no matter what other communications or contacts we had with other aliens, which we have, by the way, Anonymous, who released this information, said that we've been dealing with 9 other civilizations. But this particular civilization was helpful and very friendly. And it was an amazing opportunity for Earth to find out about life in the galaxy that we would never have had any other way, certainly not through telescopes. Mm-hmm. So these 12 very brave people were willing to go on this journey and to bring back that information. As it was, only 7 of them returned. 3 of them died, and 2 decided to remain on Serpo. So, you know, it's an incredible landmark in the new age of space travel. Mm-hmm. Probably the most significant event of the century, and it was just kept under tight wraps.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you see this evolving this day and age? I mean, there's more of the language kind of in mainstream culture, as you were saying earlier. The government, you know, is trying to acclimatize the human race, if you will, to accept the fact that, you know, this has been happening for quite a long time, you know, to a point of acceptance, maybe to remove the shock factor. Do you see something like aliens appearing more regular to more mainstream public?
You know, Dan, there's so much contact going on now, mm-hmm. Right here on Earth between us and at least 12 other races. and they're here walking among us. They're actively living among us, and there are many groups that are in touch with them. So we're entering a whole new era now, but it's not available for public consumption. Mm-hmm. We've been dealing with extraterrestrials from star system Sirius, from the Pleiades, from Lyra. So we're already well into a whole new age of contact.
Fascinating stuff. The book is Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. It's a true story of interplanetary travel. You know, there's so much information in here that, people are just going to be very fascinated about what they read. Very compelling. And is there a website people can find out more about your work?
Yeah, they can go to my website, www.et-secrethistory.com. Mm-hmm. And they can order the book through the website. They can click through to Amazon or to Barnes & Noble and order the book that way, or they can order it directly from the publisher or through me, either way. Mm-hmm.
And what is your project after this?
Well, I'm entertaining a few possibilities. I haven't decided on one definitely yet, but I think really it's time to stop talking about UFOs and start talking about relationship with other civilizations and how long we've been doing it and what we have gained from it and where it's taking us, and especially as regards science and technology, but also as regards our religions and our spirituality. All these things are in a process of tremendous change right now. And as we get deeper into the 21st century, it's going to become more and more obvious that we are now part of tremendous connections all over the galaxy, and that there are humans all over the galaxy, which is something we have already found out. So these are things that we have to now accustom people to understanding and to getting the word out.
I know when you mentioned religion that the Pope was even involved with this.
Well, we invited the Vatican representatives to two of the landings. They were invited to the one that took place in mid-Pacific at Johnston Island in 2010. They had representatives there. And also one of their senior people was involved in dealing with us on this subject for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. So the Vatican was very pleased to learn that the aliens have religious beliefs that are somewhat comparable to ours and to the Catholic beliefs. And so that exchange of information took place.
Fascinating stuff. I want to thank you for being on the program today. The book, again, is Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. Very well reviewed, by the way, listeners out there on Amazon.com. So I think a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, I can see the possibilities here, so I'm ready probably for that close encounter of another kind. Thanks for being on the program today.
My pleasure, Dan. Nice being with you.
You bet. We also encourage you to visit us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We'll have a hot link for you as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.